it's Alice. So today I wanted to go through a Wikipedia page because I love going through Wikipedia pages and learning. But this will be a page about something that I know a lot of because I am Australian, but we are looking at the Wikipedia page of Australia. And I'm just going to take you through a little bit and maybe you'll learn something about this beautiful country. So, Australia is officially called the Commonwealth of Australia. That's because we used to be part of the British Empire. So, the country comprising the mainland of the Australian continent, the island of Tasmania, which is down here, and numerous smaller islands. It has a land area of 7.6 million square kilometres, making it the 6th largest country in the world. So here it is. And here we have Papua New Guinea and Indonesia. And we have Malaysia and Thailand. And we have New Zealand and Antarctica. And this green part is actually the part of Antarctica that Australia claims. The ancestors of the Aboriginal Australians began arriving from Southeast Asia 50,000 to 65,000 years ago during the last glacial period. By the time of British settlement, Aboriginal Australians spoke more than 250 distinct languages and had one of the oldest living cultures in the world. Australia's written history commenced with Dutch exploration of most of the coastline in the 1600s of the 17th century, and then British colonisation began in 1788 with the establishment of the penal colony of New South Wales. And they arrived over here in New South Wales, which is now Sydney. So what we learn from this is that the first people here were the Indigenous Australians, and they migrated from Southeast Asia during a glacial period where they could actually just walk to Australia, to the continent. And then the first Europeans were the Dutch, and the Dutch visited, but they did not colonize, and then the British colonized in 1788. By the mid-19th century, most of the continent had been explored by European settlers, and 5 additional self-governing British colonies were established, each gaining responsible government. By 1890, the colonies federated in 1901, forming the Commonwealth of Australia. This continued a process of increasing autonomy from the United Kingdom, highlighted by the Statute of the Westminster Adoption Act 1942 and culminating in the Australia Act of 1986. So the country of Australia as we know it today started in 1901, and that's when all the colonies federated and we became an autonomous country. We still have the king, but we have our own prime minister, so we do not have a president, we have a prime minister, and you will see here we are a federal parliamentary constitutional monarchy, and our monarch is Charles III. But our prime minister is Anthony Albanese, and so he is really our leader. The monarchy doesn't really have anything to do with our country. It's more of a ceremonial thing than anything else. The name Australia is derived from the Latin terra australis incognita, which means unknown southern land. hemisphere since ancient times. So they already named Australia before they even found it because they just thought, well, there must be another continent in the southern oceans. So that's really cool, I think. When the Dutch began visiting and mapping Australia in the 17th century, they called the continent New Holland. That makes sense. The name Australia was popularised by the explorer Matthew Flinders, who circumnavigated the continent in 1803. However, when his account of the voyage was published in 1814, the name Terra Australis was used. We can see here that Indigenous Australians comprise two broad groups, which include the Aboriginal Australians, who are the various indigenous peoples of the Australian mainland and many of its islands, including Tasmania. And then we also have the Torres Strait Islanders, who are distinct the Melanesian peoples of the Torres Strait Islands. And Torres Strait is up here between Guinea, the island, where Papua New Guinea and Indonesia is up here. So we can see here some Aboriginal rock art in the Kimberley region of Western Australia. Very beautiful. Aboriginal culture is one of the oldest continuous cultures on Earth. At the time of the first European contact, Aboriginal Australians belonged to a wide range of societies, with diverse economies spread across at least 250 language groups. Estimates of Aboriginal populations before British settlement range from 300,000 to 3 million. Here is one of the penal colonies in Tasmania, and I actually visited this place a few months ago in Tasmania. It is also very famous for a gun massacre that our country had and resulted in massive gun laws, which reduced gun violence by a lot in our country, but that's another thing. I think I've actually seen this painting in one of the galleries here. Actually, it's a really beautiful painting. From 1901, Australia was a self-governing dominion within the British Empire. It was one of the founding members of the League of Nations in the 1920s and the United Nations in 1945. The Australian Capital Territory, which we just call the ACT, was formed in 1911 as the location for the future federal capital of Canberra. That happened because Melbourne and Sydney were the bigger cities, and both of them wanted to be the capital, but then they decided to make a new, like a planned city that would be the capital, and it is up in the mountains, and it is away from Melbourne and Sydney. It's up in the mountains here, over here. I thought that might have shown something, but it's okay. Here's a picture of the bombing of Darwin. Australian soldiers fought in the World Wars, but Australia was largely, the actual continent of Australia was largely unaffected physically by the war, but the Japanese did bomb Darwin in more than 100 Japanese air deserts, and then the coastline, which is very lush and green. And I think I actually want to scroll back up. To read this one. We have a population of almost 28 people, and it is highly urbanized and heavily concentrated on the eastern seaboard. Canberra is the nation's capital, while its most populous cities are Sydney and Melbourne, so that's what I was saying earlier, each with a population of more than 5 million. Australia's culture is diverse, and the country has one of the highest foreign-born populations in the world. So Australia is a country of immigrants, and I think this is really beautiful because we have people from all over the world coming and being part of this country. So most people, when they talk about the eastern seaboard, just this area here, we have Melbourne down here, and then Sydney and Brisbane up here, and just this area alone contains so much of the population. And then we have Hobart, the capital of Tasmania, we have Perth over here, we have Darwin up here, and we have Adelaide down here. So we can see the religions, governments, legislature, area, population, GDP. So Australia is the 6th largest country in the world by total area, and is sometimes considered the largest island or an island continent. Here is Uluru, and I'm sure most people know of this, and this is in central Australia, and it is a really large rock, and I've never been, but I would love to go one day to visit it, but it takes a long time, it's quite expensive to get out there. Our tallest mountain is Mount Kosciuszko, and it is 2,200 meters. So I think I read up here, sorry I keep going back and forth, but Australia, we see here, is the world's flattest and driest inhabited continent. So it's very flat, it's very ancient, we don't have much geological activity, it's very old continent in terms of that's why it's so flat, so there's no big mountains. So 2,000 meters is our biggest mountain, and every other continent has mountains that are bigger than that, and other islands and things. And we see it's a mega diverse country. Its size gives it a wide variety of landscapes and climates, including deserts in the interior and tropical rainforests along the coast. So we can see the populations. Sydney with a population of 5.4 million, and Melbourne with 5.2 million, Brisbane 2.7 million, Perth with 2.3, Adelaide with 1.4. And these are the capitals of New South Wales, Victoria, Queensland, Western Australia, South Australia. And then we have Hobart, which is the capital of Tasmania, with only 250,000, and Darwin, which is the capital of the Northern Territory, with 150,000. and from the United Kingdom. We also have quite a lot from the United States and Canada and Ireland and Germany, South Africa, from the Middle East here, from Japan, South Korea, Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines. Vietnam, a lot of Vietnamese refugees came here during the war, and also New Zealand. New Zealand is one of the most common, along with India and China and the United Kingdom, which all have 500 plus thousand. So you can see ancestry is 33% English, 29% Australian, Irish, Scottish, Chinese, Italian, German, Indian, Aboriginal, Greek, Filipino, Dutch, Vietnamese, Lebanese. But only 3.8% of Australian population identify as being Indigenous, Aboriginal, Australian or Torres Strait Islanders. Australia has no state religion. The Australian Constitution prohibits federal legislation that would establish any religion, impose any religious observance, or prohibit the free exercise of any religion. However, the states still retain the power to pass religiously discriminatory laws. We have a life expectancy of 83 years, which is 81 for males and 85 years for females, and it's the 5th highest in the world. Schooling is compulsory throughout Australia. Here we have a picture of the Sydney Opera House, which, there we go. I've never been to, but it's a very famous landmark. Here we have the Museum of Old and New Art, which we call Mona in Hobart in Tasmania. And I went to Tasmania, like I said, a few months ago, but I went to Hobart on a day that Mona was closed, so I didn't get to see this. So I was very sad about that. We see Australia has more than 100,000 Aboriginal rock art sites and traditional designs, patterns and stories infuse contemporary Indigenous Australian art. The last great art movement of the 20th century, according to critic Robert Hughes. Here we see the band AC/DC. The bushranger Ned Kelly. Wine and beer is very popular in Australia, and cricket and AFL are the most popular sports. So this was just a little outline of Australia, so you get a bit of an understanding. Sorry, I'll just slowly scroll. This is actually really cool. This is the geological regions of Australia. How pretty is this map? And this shows the different movements of the geological plates and ages of the land. And then lastly, here is a flag. I wonder why it doesn't show the Aboriginal flag, which is actually a very beautiful flag, and a lot of places fly this flag.